Tonight on ABC News Live Prime, honoring the loss of a civil rights icon.
Our flag is red, white, and blue, but our nation is rainbow. Red, yellow, brown, black, and white. We're all precious in God's sight.
We remember Reverend Jesse Jackson, a two-time presidential candidate, founder of the Rainbow Push Coalition, and a trailblazer leading generations for decades. Authorities chase new leads in the search for Nancy Guthrie. What we're now learning about the DNA found in that glove, as sources say the FBI is canvassing gun shops in the Tucson area, trying to identify the gun and the holster caught on the 84-year-old surveillance camera. The sheriff pressed on a possible motive and whether there's any evidence Nancy Guthrie is still alive. New details about the deadly shooting at an ice rink during a high school hockey game and the Good Samaritan who helped stop the shooting. High-stakes nuclear talks are happening between the U.S. and Iran, what the two sides are now signaling. The women take the ice in Milan and bringing soca to the forefront. Meet the man behind the groove of Kez the Band. And she's one of the most generous people in the world. Tonight, a look at Mackenzie Scott's donations to HBCUs, what helped inspire them and their impact.
If you were to be able to talk to Mackenzie Scott directly, what would you say?
I would say just thank you.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Lindsay Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Tonight, a powerful voice in the American story falls silent. At 84, the Reverend Jesse Jackson has died, a man whose words, witness, and will helped shape the conscience of a nation. He did not stand on the sidelines of history. He marched into it as a drum major for justice, pressing America to live up to its highest ideals, especially when it resisted. From the front lines of the civil rights movement to the global stage, Jesse Jackson was, in his own words, a soldier in the struggle to make America better, to make sure the world was more secure. He once said he hoped to be remembered as a sacrificial servant, someone who cared, who gave of himself, and who never surrendered. To many, he was exactly that, the man who gave the movement language that still echoes today. 3 words that were part prayer, part promise. Keep hope alive. Hope for the poor, hope for the marginalized, hope that justice delayed is not justice denied forever. Tonight, we reflect on the life, legacy, and unfinished work of a man who believed faith demanded action and that silence was never an option. In this hour, we'll hear from people who call Jesse Jackson a mentor, Donna Brazile, Benjamin Crump. But first, we begin with our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas.
Tonight, the nation mourning the loss of a civil rights legend whose legacy was built on trying to overcome. Jesse Jackson Sr. passed away peacefully on Tuesday morning, surrounded by family. He was born in Greenville, South Carolina, under Jim Crow segregation.
A mama was not supposed to make it, and I was not supposed to make it.
Dedicated civil rights nonviolent soldier at the side of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. At just 26 years old, he was there on that fateful April evening when King was struck down by an assassin's bullet.
I asked him, I said, Dr. King, do you hear me? Dr. King, do you hear me? And he didn't say anything.
Black! Beautiful! Wow!
Moving from the South to Chicago, he would later form People United to Save Humanity, PUSH. He broke boundaries in politics, twice running for president. First in 1984 under the banner of a Rainbow Coalition.
Our flag is red, white, and blue, but our nation is rainbow. Red, yellow, brown, black, and white.
In 1988, he was, for a time, the Democratic Party's frontrunner for the presidential nomination. Jackson also took on the role of freelance international negotiator.
Overseas, the American black activist Jesse Jackson has become an intermediary in the Middle East.
At times, he was spiritual advisor, counseling President Bill Clinton in his darkest hour. Clinton later awarding Jackson the nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And Jackson saw one of his hopes realized on election night in 2008.
America, I have never been more hopeful.
Tears flowing as he witnessed President-elect Barack Obama deliver his victory speech. Today, President Obama paying tribute, saying, "He laid the foundation for my own campaign to the highest office of the land. We stood on his shoulders." But Jackson, an ordained minister, was by no means perfect. There was marital infidelity. in the mid-1980s having to apologize for making a highly offensive remark about the Jewish community. Although somewhat diminished, Jackson leaned on his faith of forgiveness and redemption and kept on fighting, keeping his eyes on the prize. His daughter today sent Tita remembering her father.
He was part of a group of men and women who were willing to die for their beliefs.
Through it all, Jackson's faith and hope in what America could be endured.
America will get better and better. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive.
Lindsay, perhaps the thing that defined Jackson the most was his deep connection to the African-American struggle for equality. As a colleague at CNN, he made clear to me, a young black man, he wanted me to succeed. You see him here introducing me to former Vice President Al Gore. Lindsay, he loved his people.
Pierre Thomas for us, thank you. For more now, we're joined by ABC News contributor and former DNC chair Donna Brazile. Donna, thanks so much for joining us. I know that you had an opportunity to write a column today in the Washington Post on Jesse Jackson's passing, and you first worked on his presidential campaign. He was a longtime mentor of yours. Tell us about the Jesse Jackson you knew.
Well, I had just finished working with Mrs. King on the effort to make Dr. King's birthday a holiday. I was working on the 20th anniversary of the historic March on Washington. And I met Reverend Jackson along with Stevie Wonder and others. And Reverend said, why don't you come and work in politics? I said, well, I've never worked in national politics, but he hired me on the spot. And I got an opportunity to really eyewitness history. Reverend gave us hope every day on the campaign in 1984 to go out there and register new voters, to motivate people to get off the sideline. He was truly a servant leader, someone who cared deeply about the American dream and working to ensure that everyone had a seat at the table, not a folding chair, but a real seat. That's the Reverend Jackson I will remember, the man who extended a hand to everyone, who built the Rainbow Coalition and taught us that we could become somebody.
You wrote about how he thought of the nation as a quilt patched together by intent and accident. He said himself, America is more like a quilt, many patches, many pieces, many colors, many sizes, all woven and held together by a common thread. Talk about Jesse Jackson's impact on the fabric of America.
It was the values. He believed deeply in the American dream, the Constitution, but he believed that we had to work together as one nation, one people who had common values of civility, of believing that we could all sit at the table together. He understood that we had things that we shared in common. And one of the things that I believe he was able to accomplish over his many years in American politics is that he inspired millions to go out there and to become more deeply involved in this whole experiment called self-governance. That was Reverend Jackson's, what I think, greatest contribution to our legacy and what he really, truly believed. He believed that we had something in common and we had to look for it in each other. Any
memorable story that you can share about him, specifically from your time working with him?
Well, you know, Reverend would give me assignments, and I would say, Reverend, I don't know how to do it. And he said, well, we got a poor campaign, but a rich message. And I constantly wanted him to translate, but I'll never forget being in San Francisco with Reverend Jackson when he gave that speech and he talked about his mother catching the early bus. And I knew then that I had a role to play in American politics because when he spoke for his mother and his pain and his childhood growing up in the segregated South, I said, well, if Reverend Jackson can be on that stage, one day I will. And I have served as chair of the Democratic Party, not once, but twice, and still on the Rules Committee because of the work of Reverend Jackson and those who came before him.
What can politicians of today on both sides of the aisle stand to learn from Jesse Jackson?
Oh, first of all, he talked to everyone. He talked to Newt Gingrich. He made sure that he could pick up the phone. He talked to President Trump. President Trump acknowledged that today. But he also understood that we didn't have any permanent enemies or permanent friends, but we had permanent interests. And Reverend Jackson was somebody who constantly reminded us to talk across the aisle, to work for the common good. And that was his true gift to all of us who worked in his campaigns and also beyond his campaigns, because every day was a campaign for justice and equality. And just a few months ago, when I had an opportunity to talk to Reverend to do a check-in, and Reverend said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to organize a food drive." And he said, "That's a good idea." You could never sit on your hands with Reverend Jackson. He wanted you to do so much for so many. And that was his greatest gift to all of us.
Donna Brazile, we thank you so much. Our condolences to you for the loss of your longtime mentor and your brother.
My brother. I love him. The country preacher. I love him. Thank you.
Next tonight, to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, the sheriff tonight revealed DNA evidence recovered from a glove about 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home does not match anyone in the federal criminal database. So what's next? Our chief investigative correspondent Aaron Katersky reports from Arizona once again.
Tonight, 16 days into the search for Nancy Guthrie, DNA found on a glove 2 miles from her home is not a match. Authorities confirming tonight the DNA lifted from that glove did not match any of the 22 million samples, mostly from criminals, in the FBI's national database. And law enforcement sources tell ABC News the DNA sample also did not match DNA found on Nancy Guthrie's property, which was not hers or anyone in her family. That DNA is still undergoing analysis. As of tonight, DNA on the glove is getting investigators nowhere.
The glove has always been a long shot in my view, but having said that, it's another piece of potential evidence that can only become relevant, basically, if and when you develop a viable suspect.
Authorities continue to test that unknown DNA found at the property, and tonight the sheriff in the case is suggesting they'll go beyond the criminal database and look at family genealogy that's been cataloged all over the country, saying we believe that we may have some DNA there that may be our suspect, and there are other resources like private genealogical companies that we will look into. Investigators also remain focused on the best evidence they have so far, the video retrieved from Nancy Guthrie's doorbell camera of the masked suspect at the front door, armed with a pistol. The FBI's been visiting gun shops all over Tucson. The owner of this one told us the investigators were in the other day asking if there were any suspicious customers or sales of a holster that looked like the one on Nancy Guthrie's doorbell camera video. The holster, the mask, the jacket. The sheriff says those items, like this Ozark Trail Hiker Pack backpack, may have been purchased at Walmart. Authorities say they're working with Walmart to see if any of their cameras or receipts could lead to anyone of interest.
It could be a lead to Walmart. It could be a lead to a gun shop. It could be a lead on anything, DNA, whatever. They chase it down.
It was 2:28 that Sunday morning when investigators say Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker app disconnected from her phone, which was left behind at the house. Tonight, we've learned for days, searchers have been using technology called Blue Fly in drones that can help detect any possible signals from her pacemaker. That technology is also in helicopters and carried by investigators on foot. So far, no signs of the pacemaker. And while authorities have presented no new evidence that Nancy Guthrie was targeted because of her high-profile daughter or for any other reason, the sheriff telling Fox News it remains his hunch she was in some way targeted, that this wasn't random.
I believe it was a kidnapping.
Targeted kidnapping?
Yes, I believe whoever did that knew what they were up to.
So do you believe
knew who they were after?
And with authorities now formally clearing Nancy Guthrie's family, her children and their spouses of any involvement in her disappearance, the sheriff tonight is speaking of the toll misinformation and speculation has taken on the Guthries.
That family is suffering. They are hurting. And there's no justification for saying some of the things that were said out there in the media and social media. Just none. And I'm not going to tolerate it.
Aaron Katersky joins us once again from Tucson. Aaron, what are investigators focused on in particular tonight?
Well, right now, Lindsay, all they really seem to have is the DNA sample that was found here at Nancy Guthrie's property and the doorbell camera video of the suspect. And they're still trying to identify everything that he is seen wearing in that video and trace where he may have bought it. Lindsay?
Aaron Katersky for us. Thank you, Aaron. Now to tense moments outside the U.S. Capitol with tourists nearby. Police arrested a man allegedly armed with a loaded shotgun. Here's ABC's Joe O'Brien.
Tonight, the alarming scene just steps away from the Capitol. Authorities say around 12:30 p.m. with tourists looking on, an 18-year-old man wearing a tactical vest and wielding a loaded shotgun raced toward the building. Capitol Police immediately drawing their weapons and the man surrendering without firing a shot.
Who knows what could have happened if we wouldn't had officers here standing guard like they do every single day.
And tonight, the investigation.
Police shutting down blocks around the Capitol and searching and towing a car away.
And tonight, police identifying that 18-year-old suspect as Carter Camacho of Smyrna, Georgia. They say he was armed with multiple rounds of ammunition and arrived in a white Mercedes SUV. And inside that car, investigators say they found a Kevlar helmet and a gas mask.
Have you found anything in the car or anything else that indicates the suspect's motive?
That investigation is ongoing.
Does the motive appear to be to hurt the public or members of Congress?
That's ongoing.
Our thanks to Jay O'Brien. Tonight, chilling new video shows the moments the first gunshots rang out at a Rhode Island ice rink during a high school hockey game. Bystanders are now being credited for jumping in to help save lives. Here's ABC's Stephanie Ramos.
Tonight, authorities in Pawtucket, Rhode Island say this video is evidence of a targeted attack, and the suspect who opened fire at this youth hockey game, 56-year-old Robert Dorgan, killed members of his own family.
One of the victims was his ex-wife, Rhonda Dorgan, and also his son, adult son Aiden Dorgan.
They say Dorgan also shot and wounded two other relatives who were in the stands. Police looking at this video that appears to show a man in a white hat pulling a gun, moving through the crowd, then a struggle, and another man appears to grab the suspect. Authorities crediting those brave bystanders who grabbed Dorgan, preventing more bloodshed. One of them, Michael Black, telling ABC's Boston station WCVB when he realized what was happening, he told his wife to run.
I stood on the bleachers and I saw the gun and just grabbed, went for the gun. And I got my hand caught. He was trying to pull the trigger. He couldn't fire it.
At that time, the suspect did reach for a second firearm, and he did inflict a self-inflicted gunshot wound, which is what he succumbed to on scene.
My father was a shooter. After the shooting, a woman seen leaving the Pawtucket police station telling our Boston affiliate WCVB she's the suspect's daughter.
Any idea why he would have done this?
He's sick. He's very sick.
Authorities say Dorgan also goes by Roberta Esposito and had attended games in the past without any incidents. They're still searching for a motive.
Our thanks to Stephanie. Authorities reported a school teacher was killed in a crash today when her car was struck by a driver trying to escape immigration agents in Savannah, Georgia. Police said agents were trying to pull over Oscar Vasquez Lopez, who allegedly made a U-turn, ran a red light, and then hit the other car. Linda Davis, a special education teacher, died in the crash. Lopez has been treated for injuries. Homeland Security said Lopez was in the U.S. illegally, and a judge targeted him for removal. As a powerful winter storm moves through the state of California, authorities reported a search and rescue effort looking for multiple backcountry skiers now feared missing after an avalanche in the Sierra Nevada. The avalanche was reported after the area received 2 to 3 feet of snow in the last 36 hours. Authorities say at least 6 skiers survived, but several others are still missing in the avalanche near Donner Pass. Nevada County Sheriff's search and rescue team is responding to the incident. Diplomatic talks are underway on 2 fronts in Geneva between the U.S. and Iran and Russia and Ukraine. ABC Chief Foreign Correspondent Ian Pannell has more. Ian?
Yeah, Lindsay, I think it was a critical day of diplomacy, with President Trump ramping up pressure on both Iran and Ukraine. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the president's son-in-law Jared Kushner leading indirect nuclear talks with Iran in the morning in Geneva. The U.S. officials saying progress was made, but there's still a lot of details discussed, indicating that the Iranians are going to come back in a couple of weeks with more information. Meanwhile, though, this military pressure increasing. A second U.S. carrier strike group now heading to the region with the threat of military action if Iran doesn't compromise. Trump also warning Ukraine to make a deal with Russia fast. But key differences remain over land. Russia asking for more land than it's been able to take on the battlefield, and Ukraine essentially refusing. And despite talk of peace, Russia again bombing Ukrainian energy facilities. And the reality for now is this, Lindsay. Far more remains to be done to avert war in Iran and to stop it in Ukraine. Lindsay?
Ian, thank you. In Olympics news, the women's figure skating event kicked off with a short program today. The 3 U.S. women's skaters, also known as the Blade Angels, Amber Glenn, Alyssa Liu, and Isabeau Levito, all qualified for the free skate after the event. The current standing has Liu in 3rd and Levito in 8th place. Glenn, who was a favorite for the podium, popped her planned triple loop and only completed a double, which puts her in a tough position to medal. The event will continue with the free skate on Thursday. And you recognize the colors and beads, revelry in its parades. Mardi Gras, also widely recognized as Fat Tuesday, which is today, originating from medieval European and pagan fertility traditions. It was brought to Louisiana in 1699. It features parades, costumes, and symbolic purple, green, and gold colors. The tradition celebrates the final feast before the commonly practiced fasting during the 40-day Lenten season. And don't forget the king cake and good fortune if you're lucky enough to grab a slice with a plastic baby inside. And coming up, we continue to honor the life and legacy of the legendary civil rights leader Jesse Jackson. Doling out life-changing donations, one HBCU at a time, we go behind the incredible philanthropy of Mackenzie Scott. And Grammy Award-winning rapper J. Cole just announced his 2026 world tour. We have all the details. Welcome back, everyone. Reverend Jesse Jackson once said, "Never look down on anybody unless you're helping them up." Jackson is a graduate of North Carolina A&T State and HBCU. It's one of a handful of schools that have received a helping hand from one of the most generous individuals in the world, Mackenzie Scott. We traveled to Clark Atlanta University, also an HBCU, that's starting to see real impact from the tens of millions of dollars donated. Scott's money benefits students there in a number of ways, including with the help of her college roommate. On a campus steeped in history, something new is rising. Steel and glass, yes, but also possibility.
Our campus is in a moment of pivotal change.
It's invaluable. I wake up excited to learn.
Just being here at this university, I understand the importance of the shoulders that I stand on.
For the first time in more than 20 years, Clark Atlanta University is building something brand new. So tell me about the construction that's happening over here. It's called the Student Success Center, a name that feels less like architecture and more like a promise.
It's mind-changing, you know. You come to Clark Atlanta and you see so many beautiful faces, so many beautiful things.
This building is being made possible by a woman most students here may never meet, but whose impact will shape their lives for decades. Mackenzie Scott has donated more than $1 billion to historically black colleges and universities across the country since 2020. At Clark Atlanta University, her gift is transformational, funding new construction, expanding academic support, and opening doors for some students who once thought college might be out of reach.
Words can't explain what she's done for our exceptional university.
I would not be able to complete my doctoral degree without funding. It not only impacts individuals, it impacts the entire campus, it impacts the communities that we serve, and then it impacts the world that we're going to go into as change agents.
These hallowed grounds have shaped generations of scholars.
Atlanta University in 1865 was established as the first opportunity for African Americans to receive graduate degrees. The PhD, it was right here at Atlanta University.
From its earliest days, this campus has stood as a testament that education could change the trajectory of a people and ultimately a nation.
Hale Woodruff is somewhere in there.
The school's president, Dr. George French Jr., understands the importance of a college degree and the challenge of getting one.
We have individuals who will not, across the nation, not just Clark Atlanta, finish university in their last semester for lack of $2,000. It's a shame.
But a single phone call helped chart a new course for this storied institution. How did that call come in? What was said? Who said it to you?
So my secretary calls and she says, Mackenzie Scott organization is on the line and they want to speak with you. So I was literally driving, pulled over into the parking lot and prepared myself. They said, we're pleased to announce $15 million will be coming to Clark Atlanta University. I said, wait a minute, excuse me. Did you say, you said 15 million, right? Okay. Yes. I'm unapologetic. I started crying.
Clark Atlanta University is just one of 24 HBCUs receiving life-changing support.
That resource for us is invaluable to this university.
Scott's values were at least in part shaped as a student at Princeton, where she studied under Nobel and Pulitzer Prize-winning novelist Toni Morrison.
I would say that one of the most inspiring and surprising things that she has given me is a real example of a life of passionate devotion to more than one calling.
Toni Morrison's mantra was always write about something that you think is important. Don't start with yourself or with what she sometimes called our small lives, which they were at the time. But think about something that shapes your thoughts about the world more broadly.
Morrison urged her students to look beyond themselves, to think about how their work could shape the world.
I see your life as already artful, waiting, just waiting and ready for you to make it art.
What made you choose Princeton? I wanted to do creative writing.
Douglas Trevor and Mackenzie Scott were fortunate enough to be 2 of the 6 students chosen to learn from Morrison in the spring of 1991.
What was your first instinct about Mackenzie Scott? What kind of person was she, student back then?
Very lighthearted, very smart, very engaging, and she just had a great sense of humor that made her writing much more alive than it otherwise would have been.
I've never been to Jacksonville.
Another student of Toni Morrison's, Jeannie Tarkenton, who first met Mackenzie Scott at Princeton.
We're just assigned roommates. So I got a list at home, 5 names. One of them was Mackenzie. We show up, and turns out we were actually in a suite. It was 6 women, and she and I ended up sharing a tiny little bedroom. There would have been a world where I started this as a nonprofit, and
Tarkenton and Scott developed a lifelong friendship. The pair stayed in touch after Scott met Jeff Bezos in 1992, who was then creating a little-known startup called Amazon.com. Scott and Bezos were married for 25 years and have 4 children together. After their divorce in 2019, Scott became one of the world's richest women and chose to give her money away in a way that reflected those lessons. Channeling her love of writing into annual essays on her website, Yield Giving, revealing no-strings-attached donations, doling out $7 billion in 2025 alone to support HBCUs, Indigenous education, and organizations fighting for equality, climate, and community needs.
Seeing the generosity of your friend.
Right.
There are a lot of people who wouldn't ever have access to $1 billion, let alone then give it away in large part. How do you feel about your friend?
I feel not surprised, though I also am incredibly delighted and amazed because that human who can is doing.
In last year's essay, Scott revealed a surprise story about her longtime friend.
She detailed her story about you. And she said, it was the college roommate who found me crying and acted on her urge to loan me $1,000 to keep me from having to drop out in my sophomore year. And after she saw the difference she made in my life, what was she inspired to do 20 years later? Start a company that offers loans to low-income students without a cosigner. And how quickly did I jump at the chance to be one of the people who supported her dream of supporting students just as she had once supported me? And to whom will each of the thousands of students thriving on those generosity and gratitude-powered student loans go on to give? None of us has any idea. What's your reaction to hearing that?
Well, I'm tearing up, and I'm also remembering that Mackenzie writes better than anybody I know. So she put succinctly and powerfully, why I believe I'm put on this planet and we as humans are is to help where we can, in the capacity we can, and for only that reason. And then that we may get a reward from that. We may have a roommate who in the future supports the company that we start out of a passion to help others, and we may not. So when we do things as humans to help our fellow humans, it's just the kind of world and kind of energy I think that I believe we all should be adding.
All right, everyone look at me.
What a return on investment for that $1,000 loan that Scott is now paying forward, supporting her friend's company to help students afford college.
Funding U serves students at about 1,400 colleges across the country, so we don't have any screen. Probably 85% of our loans go to students at the in-state university to which they attend. And then the other pool is private universities, including 35 HBCUs. So for every dollar we lend, 30 cents comes from Mackenzie and other philanthropists. And with that 30 cents, we can then get 70 cents of money from a bank.
So it strikes me that there is really a two-prong approach of benefit to a university like Clark Atlanta University, because the student is able to get funding through Funding U, through money that she has put into your company, and then she, in turn, gets money back and then can put it directly into the campus.
Yes, exactly.
Hey, Scarlett, how you doing?
Scott is very quietly teaching students a profound lesson in the power of generosity.
If you were to be able to talk to Mackenzie Scott directly, what would you say?
I would say just thank you. The work that you're doing, that you continue to do, just inspire people like me to just want to give back to the community.
As we walk through campus, prospective students take part in a tradition touching the bust of W.E.B. Du Bois, a famed scholar here who once wrote, "Education must not simply teach work, it must teach life." And at Clark Atlanta University, that lesson still lives in classrooms, in community, in opportunity. From W.E.B. Du Bois to Toni Morrison to Mackenzie Scott, that message echoes across generations. Lift as you climb, give as you grow.
Our thanks to Clark Atlanta University and all of the people involved who are sowing seeds to uplift. Coming up, we look back at the life of Jesse Jackson by the numbers and hear from Ben Crump, someone who knew him well, and inside of one of New York City's most iconic music venues and the artist making waves with Caribbean rhythm. Welcome back to Prime. Here's a look at the stories making headlines right now. An 18-year-old man was arrested after he ran toward the U.S. Capitol with a loaded gun. The motive of the man, who police say was wearing a tactical vest and carrying a shotgun, is now being investigated. Police said the armed suspect parked his vehicle near the Capitol before making a run toward the building. Capitol Police were able to get the individual to drop the weapon without incident. A powerful explosion ripped through a New York church and injured 5 people. Officials say 2 people are in critical condition, including a firefighter who was badly burned while responding to reports of a gas odor at the Abundant Life Fellowship Church in Syracuse. Police are investigating. And Grammy Award-winning rapper J. Cole has announced his 2026 world tour. This is his first solo headline tour in 5 years and his first full global run in nearly a decade. This tour supports J. Cole's 7th studio album, The Fall Off. He will hit more than 50 cities and 15 countries. Tickets for all shows go on sale to the general public on Friday. And still ahead, remembering Reverend Jesse Jackson. We'll take a look at his long career as a leading voice for civil rights by the numbers. And civil rights attorney Ben Crump joins us to talk about Jesse Jackson and his debut novel. Welcome back, everyone. Tonight, as the tributes continue to pour in, honoring civil rights legend Reverend Jesse Jackson, we take a moment to reflect on his life and legacy in tonight's By the Numbers. For more than 6 decades, Reverend Jackson led a lifetime of crusades, dedicating his life to advocate for the poor and underrepresented on many issues, including voting rights and education. Beginning his career as a protege of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in 1965, Jackson began his work full-time with Dr. King a year after graduating college to become an organizer for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. 3 years later, in 1968, he was ordained as a Baptist minister, the same year that he was with Dr. King when the civil rights leader was assassinated. In 1971, he formed the nonprofit Operation Push, a social justice organization dedicated to improving the economic conditions of Black communities across America. Jackson ran for president twice, marking the most successful presidential runs of any Black candidate before Barack Obama 2 decades later. In 1984, following his first campaign, Jackson formed the nonprofit National Rainbow Coalition with the purpose of affording minority Americans a greater political voice. The group helped to register an estimated 3 million new voters during both his presidential bids. Jackson would later go on to merge his two nonprofits to form the Rainbow Push Coalition before stepping down in 2023 after more than 50 years at its helm. Aside from the countless accolades Jackson received over his lifetime, you can't put a number on how many lives the civil rights icon has touched. Even in his own home, his youngest daughter, Ashley, wrote today, "You taught me that I am somebody, always." He is a civil rights attorney and has represented some of the highest profile civil rights cases in modern history, including Trayvon Martin and George Floyd. Now Ben Crump takes us inside the legal world through his new fictional book, Worse Than a Lie. He tells the story of a civil rights attorney's fight for justice after a black ex-police officer is brutally attacked. And the author of the book joins us now, Mr. Benjamin Crump. Thank you so much for the time. Congratulations on the book. We're going to get to that in a moment, but first, do just have to acknowledge the passing of Reverend Jesse Jackson. And I know that you all were friends. Give us a sense of how you all met and how he helped to shape your journey as a civil rights attorney.
Certainly, Lindsay. Not only were we friends, he was a mentor to me. He was my Omega Psi Phi fraternity brother. And for me, like so many Americans for the last 50 years, he was the standard bearer for civil rights. It is undeniable the impact he made on America in his historic 1984 run for president of the United States. I mean, that speech at the Democratic National Convention, I believe, is one of the most important speeches in United States history. You know, keep hope alive. I mean, he really became the personification of hope for so many in America.
Do you want to shift gears now?
Okay.
Talk about Worse Than a Lie. So as soon as I started reading, okay, and the main character is Bo Lee Cooper. So I was saying, okay, so Ben Crump, BC. So I had to look up your middle name, Lloyd. So yes, BLC. Ma'am. So how closely is this really about your life?
Well, there are similarities.
Okay.
They're very similar. I drew from a lot of personal experiences and a lot of real cases to create this legal thriller series that featured a lawyer who looked like me and reflected my culture and beliefs, which was something different from all the other great legal thrillers out there. You know, you got John Grisham, the Rainmaker, Michael Connelly, the Lincoln Lawyer, and the one I grew up with my grandmother watching Perry Mason. And so in my mind, I said, man, I've never seen a superhero trial lawyer that looked like me and reflected my culture. And I said, I wonder why it has never been done, Lindsay? And I said, no, God was saying, they don't understand that lane. That's a lane for you, Ben Crump.
Congratulations. Also in store, just got an Emmy. Of course, you produced a documentary called How to Sue the Klan. How did you come about revisiting this story?
You know, it was young people. These young people said, we learned about this story and we want to produce it. John Beater, and he directed it, and he said, but we need a narrator who has credibility. And so I thank God for having the influence that I have so I can pay homage to those 5 ordinary black women who were racially profiled, shot by the Klan, who intentionally wanted to shoot black people. All of them were grandmothers, Lindsay, and they survived, and then they had the audacity in 1982, Chattanooga, Tennessee, to go sue the Klan. They were not intimidated.
And you are currently still in the throes of seeking justice for a number of high-profile cases. Can you give us a sense of where things stand currently with them?
You know, we have some challenging times, especially with this administration. You know, you had the convictions of the officers in Tyree Nichols' case, the federal convictions. But now it seems that the Department of Justice may be trying to offer them an exoneration of some kind. We saw it happen in Breonna Taylor. So we have work to do. And it reminds me of Jesse Jackson, just to say this. Reverend Jackson once told me we were working on a hard case. And he said, remember, Attorney Crump, you don't drown because the water is deep. You drown because you stop kicking.
When you were receiving an honorary degree not too long ago, I just want to read a quote here. You quoted an old proverb which says, education is of no value if you keep it amongst the educated, that education is going to lift our culture. How do you feel or hope that you're able to lift our culture?
You know, that is the mission, to try to do everything in our power to help give our children a better chance at the American promise of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Education is the key. Access to capital and economic empowerment, access to quality health care. I believe, Lindsay, the powers that be want to keep us sick, stupid, and broke because we're easier to control then. And I vow that I'm going to use every blessing, every resource that God ever gave me to give people, you know, the knowledge and the ability to empower themselves. That's what we need now more than ever.
Ben Crump, we thank you so much for all you do.
No, thank you, Queen.
Thank you. Worse Than a Lie is now out wherever you buy your books. Coming up, sure you've heard of pop music and rap, but what about soca? Our next guest is trying to make the high-energy rhythm and groove mainstream. See what you think. Then all new at 8, actor Shia LaBeouf arrested in New Orleans during Mardi Gras. Welcome back. He is bringing the rhythm, groove, and spirit of soca to the mainstream this Black History Month and the last day of Trinidad Carnival. Meet the man shining a light on the lesser-known modern form of calypso, Kes from Kes the Band. Our Morgan Norwood has his story.
Inside one of New York's most storied music venues, something unexpected. This stage, built for jazz,
I do believe in love at first sight.
Moving to a Caribbean rhythm, soca to be exact.
I do believe in love at first sight. For you see, last week Friday night.
Known for hits like Rum and Coca-Cola.
We drinking rum and Coca-Cola all night. Rum and Coca-Cola. Let's go!
Kes Diffenthaler, the frontman of Kes the Band, one of the Caribbean's most influential music groups,
She tell me rum and Coca.
is stepping into the fabled Jazz at Lincoln Center that hosts jazz greats including Wynton Marsalis and Etienne Charles, who performed with the band.
We hail from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean.
These are the institutions, these are the places that I would love to hear our music.
Hello, beautiful people. These are from this dope designer pub.
As he looks to share his music with new audiences.
Our mission is to really spread it in places that people probably not expect.
Across the African diaspora, music has always carried more than entertainment. It's memory, history, and identity. And soca, short for Soul of Calypso, born in Trinidad and Tobago, known for its fast-paced beats and high-energy dance melodies, is part of that lineage.
We are a mother genre. We were one of those genres that came out of emancipation in the late 1900s, and we are really the root of inspiration.
Kes understood his place in that history early on.
My mom sings classical music. My dad, true lover of calypso and culture.
The rhythm inherited, but the craft had to be built, literally.
My brother created a drum kit with buckets and it was amazing. But that's just the kind of, the spirit of necessity, just really wanting to achieve something and not letting anything stop you,
For the past 2 decades, Kes the Band has been carving out a sound rooted in soca and calypso while pulling from rock, R&B, and soul. Along the way, collaborating with artists across genres from Shaggy to Snoop Dogg, Busy Signal, and Shinsia, touring globally, reaching generations, and returning home to Carnival, where soca lives most loudly.
It is that happiness in a bottle.
But that joy he brings isn't without cost.
When joy is in your living room, sorrow is sleeping in your bed.
And that sorrow, after losing both his dad and sister Daniela, spilling into his songs.
You've said that many of your biggest songs have come from your hardest moments. You talked about your dad, recently. You're also dealing with the loss of your sister. Why do you think that joy continues to be the language that your pain translates into?
A lot of the times, I write songs usually when I'm at sometimes my most testing times or even my weakest. Something amazing happens almost to lift me up and to let me know that this is part of this thing we call life.
It's the tension between grief and celebration that isn't unique to Kes. It's embedded in soca itself.
A lot of people see Carnival and they see it as one way and it's that party and that beads and that sexiness, but that came from a revolution, that came from resistance, it was about identity and protecting what that was and having a good time doing it.
Survival, translated to sound, is what the world is only beginning to understand.
What is your ultimate hope for the genre?
My hope for the genre is for people to understand it, for one, and to know that you can draw for it when it is that you feel to take what it's offering, which is happiness, which is a sense of euphoria. It reminds us of our humanity with each other, especially if you get involved in the parties and the concerts. And there's something special that happens that I hope that is translated to the world because it's unique to what it is.
And for Kes, it starts with changing how soca hits like Savannah Grass are heard. And where. With spaces like Jazz at Lincoln Center, built on tradition and making room for something expansive.
A lot of people ask, well, why isn't soca as worldwide? I think it's the underbelly of all genres. I think every genre is aware of what soca is. So it is worldwide, but I feel like it will have its time to really shine.
And that is our show for this hour. I'm Lindsay Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Good night.